In the summer before I went off to graduate school, I was trying to stack as much money as I possibly could. This included working full-time, taking up odd jobs on Craigslist, like helping people move, and tutoring high school students. One day, while browsing Craigslist, I came across an ad for work as a junior animator, video editor. It paid $20 an hour, so I instantly applied. I had passing familiarity with animation programs because my friend and I had spent years trying to design a simple video game, and my video editing was quite good because I had run a popular YouTube channel when I was younger. I got the job. It was weirder than I expected. The company was in a nondescript business complex in Irvine, and every employee had an electronic badge that unlocked doors. Certain levels of employees could unlock certain doors. Being at the bottom tier, I could only unlock the entrance, the door to the room I worked in, and the conference room where we'd have weekly meetings. I never saw any other rooms in the building and never spoke with anyone who worked in them. There were 7 animators, including me. We sat in a row of cubicles in our own small room. Our job was to edit cartoon knockoffs of popular children's characters, typically Spider-Man, Elsa, SpongeBob, My Little Pony, etc. We worked on 1 or 2 videos per week, and basically we just created cartoon objects and settings. The work was surprisingly simple. There was very little real animation required. The job paid so much that I hardly paid attention to how strange it was. The company divided our labor in such a way that none of us animators ever saw a video in its entirety. We each worked on a few seconds of it, and often the project would be taken away from us and transferred to another department before we were finished. The rules were odd. The animators and I were not allowed to speak to each other under any circumstance. We were not permitted to exchange names or introduce ourselves. Speaking or looking at another person's computer was a terminatable offense. No 2 people were allowed in the break room at the same time, and no cell phones were permitted inside the building. Ever. The room was strange, too. It was blue. Everything was blue. The walls, the chairs, the keyboards, the door. A blue air freshener was taped to the wall of each workstation, but it didn't smell like anything. There was one object that was red. A telephone. It rang every so often, but we were not allowed to answer it. I was instructed to stand up from my chair and stretch each time it rang, but over time I noticed that the other employees had been instructed to do other things. One of them took deep, slow breaths. One of them put his head down on his desk. 2 of them left the room and returned. One swirled around in his chair. One coughed. I noticed a few other weird things about the company during my short time there. It wasn't unusual to see employees crying as they made their way through the halls. Any time I spotted one of them crying, they always tried to hide it. Some of them couldn't. On a few occasions, I saw a child wandering through the halls looking for someone, or maybe for a bathroom. When I brought this up to my supervisor, he told me, "It's bring your kid to work day for the department upstairs." He told me that 3 times in 2 months. Things started to get really uncomfortable around the 2-month mark. One day, when I checked my company email account for the weekly briefing/workload assignment, there was an email titled Lullaby. Inside was a link to a short, low-resolution video of a young girl asleep in a bed. She babbled in what I believe was Russian or Ukrainian, and occasionally fidgeted or brought her hands up defensively to protect her face. It was clear that she was having a nightmare. Behind her on the bedpost was a blue air freshener, much like the one next to me in my cubicle. Whimsical vaudeville music played in the background. I examined the recipients and sender of the email and found that it had been sent from inside the company to several employees on a list. I forwarded the email to my boss and asked him what the deal was, and he quickly responded that it was a joke from our partners overseas, and that I had been mistakenly added to the recipient list. He told me to ignore it and keep up the excellent work, and that my review would be coming up with the possibility of a raise. More than $20 an hour. I guess my memory is for sale because I quickly forgot about the video. Only a few days later, when I returned to the office after a holiday weekend, there was another email waiting for me, titled "Be Brave, Spidey." I was reluctant to open it, and now I wish I hadn't. Inside was a link to a Russian-language website. When I clicked it, I saw a video of a real kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, dressed as Spider-Man. The boy sat in what looked like a child's bedroom. His mask was pulled down and his costume sleeve was pulled up. The boy screamed and cried as an adult man wearing a Hulk costume gave him 3 different injections with a long needle. Off-screen, another person hurled stuffed animals at the kid, hitting him in the head with them, and even once hitting the needle as it stuck into his arm, causing the kid to wail even louder. By the end of the short clip, the boy was shaking and nearly catatonic. The Hulk man laughed and danced around him almost ritually. Cheerful kids' music played the entire time. As far as I could tell, the video was not acted. What I saw was a real medical procedure and real terror. Horrified, I emailed my boss, demanding an explanation. I received none after about an hour. Normally, he replies within minutes or even seconds. So I left my cubicle and stormed down the hall to knock on his office door. As I passed by our conference room, I heard my boss's muffled voice and then a bunch of other racket. I was so angry and freaked out that I didn't care if I interrupted him. I badged the electronic lock and cracked the door open. The conference room was dark, but I could see about 15 men sitting inside at the far end of the wall. Most of them were dressed nicer than me, so I knew that they were senior employees who worked upstairs. A video played on a large screen at the other end of the room, and even though I couldn't see it from my angle, I recognized the sounds. They were watching the same horrific video I'd seen an hour before. Some of the employees smoked cigarettes like they were at a fucking gentleman's club. Perhaps strangest of all, a conference phone sat in front of them, and a loud voice came through the speaker talking in Russian. One of the men in the room occasionally replied in Russian. I left work early that day, too freaked out to return to my station. By the time I got home, I had a missed call from my boss and a voicemail summarily terminating me, stating that the project was complete and that unfortunately our entire team was no longer needed. I didn't give a shit. I didn't plan on going back anyway. I spent the rest of the summer doing odd jobs and trying to forget that company. But weird shit continued happening, and it got worse and worse. A few weeks later, I visited my brother and his wife at their home in Southern California. My niece Katie was 5 years old at the time and could already operate electronics better than I can. She's got an iPad and spent a bunch of time showing me photos she'd taken of birds and insects and people. She's also got Netflix and YouTube and watches those regularly. One night during my visit, my brother and I were on the couch watching one of the Hobbit movies. Katie was lying prone on the floor nearby, watching a cartoon on her iPad. When I leaned over and asked what she was watching, I immediately recognized the cheaply animated characters. It was a video I myself had edited. I recognized the ringing red phone, which I had designed after the phone in our office. I recognized the glass bottle the characters drank from. And I recognized the way the joints and jaws moved. All things I had worked on at one point during my brief stint at that company. But I had never seen a full video. This one was about 5 minutes long. It featured two cartoon kids dressed up in Elsa and Spider-Man costumes, stealing their father's beer and getting drunk. Then one of the kids trips and falls, smashing his face into a desk and splitting his skull open. Blood sprays everywhere. I was confused and disturbed by this video, but it wasn't until YouTube's stupid autoplay feature cycled to another recommended video that I really freaked out. Another video played, then another and another, all products of my company, some of which I'd worked on. Every video featured recognizable children's characters from Disney and Marvel and other big brands, but something weird or violent or sexual took place in them. I pulled Katie away from the iPad and put Finding Nemo on the TV for all of us to watch. Before I returned home, I warned my brother about what I had seen and advised him to keep her off YouTube for a bit. It wasn't until I returned home and started digging around on YouTube that the true scope of these fucked up videos came to light. I found several channels with child-oriented names like Silly Hero Fun, not a real name, Mods, all of which produce videos exactly like the ones I'd worked on. They all specifically target children using familiar characters, and they all link to more legitimate cartoons via the recommended videos algorithm. The more I watched, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. These videos are constantly removed, renamed, and re-uploaded, over and over and over. After watching about 100 of these videos, I found that they all shared certain similarities and can be divided into recurring themes. By intergalactic no-sleep law, I'm not allowed to link the videos or mention the YouTube channel names, but if you want to find these videos for yourself, simply type Elsagate into YouTube and you will see for yourself. Warning: the cartoon videos are disturbing, and the live-action ones are outright depraved. I consider some of them to be actual child abuse. The themes I've identified are as follows. Some of the videos show characters stealing alcohol and hurting each other. One shows child versions of Mickey Mouse getting drunk on their dad's beer, and then one of them splits his head open. This same video has been reskinned over and over with Elsa and Spider-Man, Paw Patrol and Minions. Getting drunk and hurting yourself is ubiquitous in these videos. Also, burning yourself on a stove or getting sucked into an escalator are common. Accidental injury is the driving plot device. Search: Elsa drunk hurt head or Mickey drunk hurt head. It works with Spider-Man, Hulk, etc. The phobia of spiders and insects is another common theme. I found a video showing minions covering themselves in disgusting-looking bugs. The end of the video depicts a man drinking a bottle of urine, which I'll discuss below. Another video shows Elsa, Spider-Man, and the Hulk all being swarmed by insects. Sometimes they require hospitalization and surgery because of the bugs. The characters always react with horror to bugs, and the bugs always injure them. Search terms include Mickey insects or Elsa insects gross. Drinking from toilets, eating poop, drinking urine, and smearing feces on people's faces is another theme commonly portrayed in these videos. Many of them are live action, with real actors dressed in costumes that target the attention of children. In one video, Spider-Man and Elsa drink from toilets and also find insects in one. In another, Venom buries Elsa alive and shits on her head. Another shows the Joker feeding excrement to Elsa and Spider-Man. Any of the character names with the word poop or toilet will return these videos. Extreme medical violence and the phobia of sharp objects is yet another theme you'll find in these videos. Children cutting each other's fingers off with razors. Doctors forcing needles into children's arms, eyes, and rectums. And gory surgery are all present. In one, Hulk crushes Elsa's bones and she requires injections. In another, Hulk gets needles shoved into his face and has his eyes pulled out with tweezers. In that same video, Spider-Man throws sand in a child's eye, and the child requires injections in said eye. Spider-Man later gets sick from eating bad food and requires needles to be shoved into his body in multiple places. Search terms include Hulk eye injection, Elsa surgery, or Spider-Man, Elsa sick. Pregnancy is frequently depicted as a curable illness. Unsurprisingly, the cure is an abortifacient injected directly into the woman's stomach. The worst video I found depicts tummy aches, illness, and pregnancy in a very blended way, all of which require the use of needles to cure. In another live-action video with real people, an evil doctor chases pregnant children around with a giant needle while they scream and cry. Many of the pregnant women give birth to insects or to logs of shit. Search terms include Elsa pregnant surgery and Elsa pregnant injection. Really, any of these cartoon names with pregnant works. The helplessness of children to protect themselves from adults is a popular theme, especially in the live-acted videos. In many of them, a very large adult man dressed as Hulk grabs children by their necks, holds them to the ground, rubs his ass all over their faces, or otherwise beats them up. Search terms include Bad Hulk Superhero Battle. It gets worse and worse the more you follow the video trail. There are also tons of videos of toddler-aged girls being kidnapped and tied down by adult men, depicted in a playful manner. Many of the men are wearing frightening Halloween masks. The children are often crying and are not having fun at all. Some appear in pain. So many of these have been reported/taken down by YouTube that now the channel has converted all video titles to Russian, and they cannot be searched in English. This is the sickest channel I found, and the point where I completely stopped watching. Sexualization of children and depiction of pregnant children as a good thing. Many of the Elsagate videos depict children in an arguably sexual light. The most popular channel with this kind of content stars 2 young Asian girls and has 3 million subscribers. Many of the videos depict butt shaking, playing doctor, and fake vomiting. Others show girls and even boys celebrating their own pregnancies. I won't even provide search terms for these. Just don't. It took me a while and a bit of research to pick up on the purpose of these videos. At face value, they're all a bunch of psychotic nonsense. But when I started to see how they all mimic each other and build on each other, I realized that they must have a grand purpose. The fact that there are thousands of these videos, but they all cover the same 7 topics, screams conditioning. The creators of these videos are banking on the probability that if kids watch enough of the videos, they'll be saturated with 2 or 3 ideas. Hit your friends. Blood is funny. Poop is for eating. When an adult gets on top of you, don't fight back. The fact that violence and sex are such recurrent themes tells me that the creators want to normalize them. They want kids to be desensitized to sex and violence, or maybe even curious about them. The comments in the videos reveal that a lot of the viewers are adults and fetishists, perverts. They really enjoy the videos of kids being kidnapped and tied up. They beg for more and offer to support via crowdfunding. In short, these videos are designed to groom children and to satisfy perverts. After digesting all this information, I contacted my brother, who had some terrifying news for me. Apparently, he and his wife had received several phone calls from people asking for me. When my brother asked who they were, they always hung up. He said, "They always have an accent." Worse, a man actually tried to pick Katie up from kindergarten by claiming he was me. He gave the office my full name and told them he was her uncle, here to pick Katie up for a doctor's appointment. When the receptionist said she was going to call Katie's parents for verification, the man took off running. He didn't even get into a car. He ran out of the parking lot. I began receiving text messages from very long numbers. The texts always contained links to YouTube videos. I always deleted them and blocked the numbers. By the time I was packing up and preparing to move, the texts had stopped. But my brother told me that Katie came home with an air freshener in her coat and couldn't remember how it had gotten there. He sent me a photo of it, and I recognized it as the same type from my office. He said it had no odor. Things settled down for a while. My first year of grad school blindsided me, and I forgot all about the strange incidents. But over the summer between my first and second year, something else happened that reignited my old fears. I worked part-time at the university library. I always took the night shift because I could relax and work on grant applications and didn't have to deal with many students. But one night, an older man checked out a stack of medical books at my counter. He looked and smelled like a tenured professor, so I thought nothing of it when he struck up a conversation and asked me if I'd had my flu shot yet. I told him I had, and he smiled and turned to leave. But then, at the door, he turned back to me and called out, "And has Katie had all of her vaccinations?" By the time I recovered from the shock of his question, the man had disappeared into the dark outside. He left the books by the door. Story 2. My name is Finn Conway, and I have a lot going on in my life. I'm currently 22 years old, and I'm completing my master's in computer science in a college located in a major city in the United States. It isn't too bad. I thoroughly enjoy computer science, and I take night classes so I can still retain my underpaid day job as an IT guy for a small startup near my school. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and despite the somewhat expensive living prices in this area, I love the neighborhood and the people. Honestly, for a guy in his 20s who came from no money, I was doing pretty well. I was in a pretty ideal situation. That is, up until last week. Last week, my roommate moved out on me without much notice. He told me he got an offer for a job in another city across the United States, and that he'd already sold his half of the furniture in Craigslist that morning. This was all through text, by the way. By the time I came home from my night classes, his room was pretty much empty and he wasn't responding to my angry texts anymore. That put me in a severe bind. I made okay money as an IT guy, but part of the reason I was getting my master's was because I knew it would pay off when my degree became more valuable and I could work for bigger companies. After all, I had an unnecessarily large amount of student loans to pay off for my undergraduate degree on top of the price of achieving my master's and increasing rent. But tuition money and rising rent prices weren't even the biggest issues. You might wonder, why doesn't he just move into a one-bedroom or even a studio by himself? After all, I'm a guy who likes my privacy, and living in a one-bedroom wouldn't have been so bad. To answer your question, I would have moved into a smaller space if I didn't have a crazy online stalker I was busy trying to get a restraining order against. Turns out, it's hard to get a restraining order if you don't know the real name of the person you're trying to file one against. You see, I used to play a popular online video game back in high school where you could get married with other players to boost stats. And this one girl took our in-game marriage way too seriously. She thought we were actually married. She would send me messages that were extremely creepy and a violation of my privacy, including asking for nudes and sending her own. I was very disturbed. Even though I told her I wasn't interested, that I was gay and I only married her for boosted stats, she continued to press on with the creepiness. I brushed her off as an overzealous gamer girl and eventually stopped playing the game entirely. But then she started finding personal information of mine online, like my private Facebook, Twitter, and phone number, and it eventually escalated to finding where I lived. She started sending threats against me and my family. Things got creepy and I had to file a report against her. She's been laying low for a while, but you can't blame a guy for being cautious. After all, I moved a total of 3 times since she first found my address, and she managed to find me every time. So yeah, a lot's going on in my life. You could say I had a streak of bad luck. I honestly hoped it was just mere bad luck and not a sign of something worse. Balancing my masters, my job, and warding off a crazy stalker has not been easy. But now I had to find a new roommate to fulfill what's left of my lease. I ended up posting an offer on Craigslist a few hours ago, offering interviews for a new potential roommate. I had 3 people respond to my offer total, and all of them were memorable in their own right. The first guy's name was Daniel. He was a normal, plain, and average guy working on his PhD in chemistry, which was everything I wanted in a roommate. I asked him all the standard questions. How often did he clean? What times would he generally be home, if he smoked, etc.? He had all the right answers, the perfect demeanor, and seemed like a normal person overall. After everything I'd been through, I would have thoroughly appreciated some hint of normalcy and constance in my life. Overall, Daniel seemed pretty promising, and I honestly would have just gone with this guy if it weren't for the fact that I had 2 more interviewees right after him. I didn't want to blow off the other two interviewees and wanted to give them a fair chance. So I told Daniel I'd call him back within a day or two, and we left on good terms. Daniel was certainly a compelling choice. The second guy's name was Hector. Hector was interesting, if I were to be polite, and a complete nut job if I were to be frankly honest. When he walked in the room, I didn't suspect anything at first. He also seemed pretty average. Tall, tan, wavy black hair, really bad dark circles. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but otherwise he looked pretty normal. But then he opened his mouth, and I knew I had to end this interview quickly. "Hi, thanks for coming to the interview. You're Hector," I said, closing the door. I led him to the living room. "Yeah, nice to meet you." Hector flopped down in the seat I offered him, seemingly admiring the armchair I got from a garage sale a long time ago. "This is a really nice place. Reminds me of my own room back down under." "Down under? Oh, so you're from Australia?" I was surprised. He didn't have an Australian accent that I could detect. "No, I'm from hell," Hector replied casually. I cocked my head in curiosity. "Hell, huh? Is that a city in Australia?" I asked. I never heard of a city named Hell personally, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. Hector leaned forward in his chair, resting his elbows on his knees. "No, hell. You know, burning fires, scorching heat. Where the souls of the condemned go to get tortured for all eternity." Sounds like Australia to me. I tried laughing it off. Hector didn't look so amused. "No, man, I'm a demon." "Like a demon at games? Or sports? Or something?" "No, like a demon. I included it in my application." I remembered reading that. Name, Hector. Occupation, unemployed demon. Previous residence, the sixth gate of hell. I thought he just had an odd sense of humor. "I thought you were joking," I said after a brief pause. "Yeah, so I have a funny story for you. I got kicked out of my place recently for refusing to eat humans. They got offended and said I was being difficult and not following the customs of our kind or whatever. But I'm honestly just tired of eating humans and I want to try new things. There are so many different things to eat in this world, and you honestly get sick of eating humans after a couple of centuries." Huh. "You don't believe me," Hector remarked, sitting back in his chair. "No one does. You humans need to open up your minds more. Is this some sort of prank? Am I on camera?" I looked around the room to see if there were any camera crews waiting to jump in at the right "gotcha" moment. "No, I can promise this isn't a trick of any kind," he replied. I glanced at the clock. Unfortunately, there was still a lot of time before the next person came in, so I decided to humor Hector for what it was worth. At the very least, when this was over, I could tweet about having the weirdest person come into for an interview and earn some internet points for that. "Okay, let's say you really are a—" I made some vague hand gestures. "Demon," Hector finishes. "Yeah, a demon. Why would you want to live here of all places?" "Well, when I was kicked out of hell, I wasn't given much. I left with only the clothes on my back, so I had to pawn off a gold watch I stole from a rich guy in the 1900s and got a lot of money for that. Don't worry, though, I'm confident that I can find a job within a month of living here for sure. At least, I think I can." "And you were kicked out because you refused to eat humans?" "Yup," Hector said, popping the pea. You really don't eat humans? Then are you like the equivalent of a demon vegan or something? I asked cautiously. Not exactly. I still eat humans when I have to. I'm just not a picky eater. Most demons are what you'd call elitist and consider human souls gourmet and expensive, just because it's gotten really hard to eradicate you lot. Your kind is getting smart. It was definitely easier to eat humans when they didn't wash their hands, and all it took was the plague to eradicate half of the population, he replied, crossing his legs and folding his hands over its lap. So then, what do you eat? I probed. Same things as you. Chicken, pork, the occasional medium rare steak when I can afford it. But I consume the souls. Their other bits are tasty, too. Blood's always better fresh, and bones have a surprisingly good amount of soul in them. Here's a secret. When you're sucking on the marrow, that's their soul, not just bone marrow. He grinned. That's what gives it so much flavor. Wow, that's, dark. I grimaced, looking up at the clock behind Hector. It wasn't anywhere near the time for the second interview, but this was clearly headed nowhere from the start. I eat chickens for their souls. You eat them for their physical flavor. What's the difference? Hector asked. I paused. For a second, it was almost as if he had a point. But you used to eat humans, I countered, ultimately unconvinced. And you used to like Nickelback unironically. Or maybe you still do. Hector motioned to my signed Nickelback poster on the wall adjacent to him. I felt my face getting red. I knew I should have hidden that before the interviewees came in. I was slightly offended that he would call me out like that. Point is, a few years can drastically change you humans. And for us demons, a few centuries can change us too. Why do you all think we're the same as we've been since the 1500s? We're just like you guys. Sort of. Okay. So, if you're a demon, why would you want to be in such a small room? Couldn't you find somewhere else? Somewhere better and not as cramped? Shouldn't you be able to, I don't know, conjure up some money with your demonic magic or whatever? Easy. Rent's cheaper here, and I don't need a lot of room. We demons aren't rich, we don't all use what you call magic, and we aren't omnipotent either. I can't just make money out of nothing, though it'd be helpful. Hector droned. Besides, I love this part of the city. So much culture, so much food, so much fried chicken. I really, really love fried chicken. Don't we all? I said. Besides, I feel like you need me as much as I need this. I stiffened. What do you mean? You're Finn Conway, 22, working on a master's. Has had a stalker for a while now. If you ask me, your stalker's pretty insane and she's still out there somewhere. I can keep her away from you if you let me live here. I felt my blood run cold. How did he know all this? I instantly felt a wave of discomfort crash over me. I mean, that's what I got from your Twitter account anyway. You should really make it private. Everyone can see your information, he mentioned, noticing my discomfort. I relaxed visibly, but it still rubbed me the wrong way that he knew so much about me and I knew nothing about him, except for the fact that he claimed he was a demon. This was the point where I realized I should cut the interview short. Listen, sorry to cut this short, but the next interviewer should arrive any minute now, and I don't want to keep him or her waiting. I think you should leave. I'd entertained him long enough. This weird demon roleplay of his was going way too far, and I wasn't interested. I had enough craziness in my life from having to deal with a stalker. I couldn't deal with a delusional roommate. Plus, Him knowing my whole life story from Twitter was a little too personal for my comfort. I got up from my seat hastily and reached over to shake Hector's hand to end this before it went on for too long. It was cold to the touch, but what was colder was the unexplainable pang in my chest when I saw Hector's downfallen expression. "Oh, okay. When do you think I'll hear back?" he asked. I rubbed the back of my neck, a bad, nervous habit. "Soon. Probably a couple of days. I'll call you about it." I lied. I wasn't planning on calling him back, and he probably knew it. Even if his story were true, I wouldn't want to live with a formerly man-eating demon who claimed to be on a chicken soul diet. But it wasn't true. Demons weren't real. This man had clearly lost his marbles, and I didn't need a crazy roommate on top of everything else on my plate. "All right, cool." Hector got up from his seat, looking dejected. I walked him to the door, and before I closed the door, he spoke up. "Listen, I really need this. If there's anything else you need, more rent, more anything, just let me know." I nodded, and he gave a sheepish smile before walking off into the hallway. I closed the door, locked it, and slumped back in my seat, hoping the third guy wasn't a weird person like Hector was. I really needed to get better security and be more careful about posting my problems on Twitter. The third person never ended up showing up, but I couldn't wait forever. I decided to contact Daniel when I got back from my night classes about the offer. But when I got back from my night classes, I noticed something was terribly off. My door was unlocked, but I knew for a fact that I locked it when I left. I double-checked these kinds of things all the time, being the neurotic person that I was. I debated calling the police when I felt something cold poke my back and a chilling voice say, "Go on in. What are you waiting for?" I froze up and turned my head to see a small, skinny woman in a wedding dress and messy, matted, greasy hair with bad makeup pointing a gun in my direction. "Who are you?" "Oh, don't act like you don't know. Mr. Peanut Butter 26, she grinned, revealing teeth that looked like they hadn't been brushed in a while. I instantly knew where this was going and who this was. Only one person would refer to me as my shitty username from that stupid game years ago. My stalker had found where I lived again, and this time she was taking things to a whole new level. Or should I say my darling husband? Her hand caressed my body, and I felt shivers running down my spine. If she hadn't had a gun, I would have been able to easily turn the tables on her. She was easily a head shorter than me. "How the fuck did you find where I live?" I grit my teeth and looked around for security cameras, hoping they'd pick up on this very illegal activity going on. "Don't bother. I already set all the cameras on loop and no one comes home this late but you. Now, unless you want me to shoot your pretty little brains out, I suggest you go inside." She pushed the gun into my back forcefully, and I quickly turned the knob to my door and went inside. The apartment was dark and cold. My interior was decked out in candles shaped into a huge heart with rose petals scattered around, and a chair in the middle of the heart of candles, which were the only source of illumination besides the lights from the buildings outside the window. Under the chair was an intricate-looking summoning circle, the design of which I recognized from the game. In-game, that summoning circle would have summoned a fae from Askenhelm, a fictional land, who ordained your marriage in the name of magic and goodness and made it official. My stalker was really trying to marry us like how it was done in the game. "Sit," she ordered. I did as I was told, and she brought duct tape from under her dress to wrap my limbs around the chair. She then went to the kitchen, humming a tuneless song. "Listen, I don't know what you want or how you got here. I don't know how the fuck you managed to fly under security personnel. You know what? You're always so mean, Finn." She cut me off. "You're always playing so hard to get, always." Her deranged voice shut me up quickly. "I understand, though. I would want my future husband to prove their worth to me, too. But we're together now, and nothing can get in our way this time. Not the computer screen, not the cops. Amy and Finn, partners in crime. Lovers forever. Finally married under the gracious fairies of Asgenhelm, like fate dictated it to be. This is how it should have been from the start." So that's her name, Amy. She brought over 2 glasses of a dark red liquid from the kitchen on a silver platter that I didn't know I had. "Drink this," she cooed. I turned my head away from her. "Fuck no. Drink it now." Amy's personality went from blissful happiness to sharp and threatening as she grabbed my head and shoved the glass in my mouth. I choked and tried to resist drinking any of the substance, but a mouthful managed to go down my throat. It was an extremely bitter concoction of wine and something else that I didn't want to think about. Amy took dainty sips of the wine. Meanwhile, I started feeling sweaty and my vision started to go hazy. She clearly drugged whatever this was. "The blood oath has finally been fulfilled," Amy said excitedly. I wanted to throw up. This crazy bitch really mixed her own blood into the drink. She kneeled below me. Her stench made me want to puke. We've been married online, but I was thinking, why not get married in real life, in the eyes of God himself? But obviously God didn't want us together, so I had to turn to the fairies instead. They can marry us. They wouldn't stop something so lovely and pure like this. With that, Amy poured the rest of the concoction under my chair and started laughing. "I've been waiting for this for months, for weeks, for days. I've been following you, you know. You really let your guard down, but I find that so adorable about you. When I saw that you posted a Craigslist offer looking for a roommate, I just had to make sure that it was you, and it was." So that's how she found me. My stupid Craigslist ad. It just registered to me that she might have been the 3rd interviewee who never showed up. And in that time, she must have scouted out the area to plan this shit. For someone who was in the computer science field, I had really let my cybersecurity guard down, and it led to my undoing. I was entirely too careless. I groaned. My head began to pound, and my vision became even blurrier. She caressed my hands and began to put a ring on my finger. "The potion I put in the love wine brings us both to the plane of the fairies so they can marry us," she said. Her words felt so weirdly distant. The ring was placed on my finger, secure and tight. She mounted my lap and hugged me, whispering things into my ear, and I felt so disgusted that I just wanted to disappear. "And now it's official. We're married. Don't you see the fairy, Finn? The fairy's right behind you." Amy paused, realizing what she had said. She scrambled to her feet. I looked up at her, and she looked as if she saw a ghost. Wait," she mumbled. She backed up a few steps. I looked at her feet, unable to focus properly. The lighting from the buildings behind me casted the shadow of a big bird. "Who's there? Who are you?" Amy pointed the gun in my direction, and I couldn't even physically flinch from the drugs. I figured she was hallucinating or something, but whatever she was seeing seemed pretty real and terrifying. "I'm his roommate. Who are you?" the voice replied. I recognized that voice. "Hector?" In my haze, I managed to make out his words clearly. I wondered how he's managed to walk into my room, since the door was blocked by Amy, and both of us would have seen him come inside. Being that my back was facing the balcony, I assumed that was the only possible way he got in. But how did he get all the way up to the 13th floor without anyone noticing him? And better yet, how was his timing so good? "I'm his wife, asshole," Amy spat. "For some reason, I don't believe you." Hector deadpanned. "Neither of you are what either of you just claimed yourselves to be," I thought to myself. I didn't dare say it out loud because I was in a very tight space. "It doesn't matter what you believe. You're getting in the way of our marriage, and no one can stop us." Amy sneered. "How the fuck did you get in here?" "You should have really looked up that symbol before you drew it. It kind of opens a portal from my world to yours. When you poured blood over it, it activated the portal. Does that explain things?" I began turning my head towards Hector, only to be stopped by his firm grip on my shoulder. "Don't turn around," he ordered. Being as I wasn't exactly in a position to argue, I complied. Also, the hand on my shoulder was too large, long, gnarled, and sharp to belong to a human being, so that alone was enough to convince me. My head lazily lolled back to face Amy, who was still pointing the gun, rocking side to side on the balls of her feet, and trying to put up the brave front she had a few minutes ago. "Halloween's not coming for another year, buddy. I don't know how you got up here in that weird demon furry. Get up, but you're definitely not leaving this alive. I'm gonna fucking kill you." Amy's remarks truly made me wonder what she was seeing and what I was missing out on. "Hey, close your eyes and keep it shut until I say otherwise." He whispered gently. He enclosed his overgrown hands over my field of vision. Petrified and drugged to high heaven, I did what I was told to do and shut my eyes. "I have a gun and I know how to use it. Stay away from me, I fucking mean it. If you don't, I'll shoot." Amy's voice was faltering. From her tone, she clearly didn't know how to use a gun and wasn't planning on actually using it. These were all empty threats. At least I hoped they were. "And this is why you guys need better gun control." I heard Hector's lazy drawl as he stepped forward. For some reason, his footsteps grew heavier and his voice boomed all around even more. I also heard Amy's quivers turn to full-out whimpers and desperate screams to "stay the fuck away." I felt the room settle to a chill as the trigger was pulled and the shot rang. It was a deafening bang and an even more deafening silence afterwards. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting a wail of grief leave my throat, not wanting to witness what had happened. I heard Amy's manic giggles as she shot 4 more times, each shot more deafening than the last. I swore I could hear the bullets bursting through Hector's body. I felt tears burn my eyeballs as I pleaded for her to stop. "Amy, stop, I'm begging you. You've done enough," was all I could manage to choke out as I shook my head in shock and disbelief. Still shutting my eyes, I prayed Hector was still alive despite the 4 gunshots that I heard, knowing it was highly unlikely. I felt responsible for this mess, and I had somehow managed to drag him into it, even though it was none of his business. And now he was probably dead. It was all my fault. It's too late. I told it to stay away. Thought it could be a hero or something. What a joke. And you, Finn, I warned you, I fucking warned you, and you're next. You know why? Don't fucking shake your head, you know why. It's because you lied to me and you didn't return my love. Her crazed raves were cut off abruptly by the sudden sounds of her choking. Wait. I heard more choking, some cracks and screams. What's happening? I yelled. I was tempted to open my eyes, but remembering Hector's words kept me from doing so. Stop. I'm sorry. Please let me. I flinched as I heard Amy's threats abruptly change to pleas for her life. Her pleas became increasingly desperate as air escaped her lungs. Whatever was happening to her definitely wasn't something I wanted to see with my own eyes. My imagination did enough. She seemed to be flailing and gurgling before I heard a loud and sickening crunch, and everything went silent again. I held my breath. Silence, bewildering silence, filled the room. I heard the quiet hiss of smoke in the distance and smelled what I could only describe as burning rubber. You can open your eyes now, Hector said softly. I knew he had somehow survived the 4 gunshots and managed to quell Amy's insanity. I don't know if I want to, I blurted. Seriously, it's fine, Hector insisted. I opened my eyes. In the darkness, I was surprised to see that Hector looked like the same Hector I saw earlier this afternoon, and Amy was nowhere to be seen. I expected to see something other than Hector standing there, but he defied my expectations. With the dim lighting coming from the buildings across from mine, Hector's silhouette looked almost ethereal as he hunched over slightly over where Amy once stood. There was blood all over his button-down, dripping down his mouth onto his hands, but no body to show for it. Is she? She won't be bothering you again. Hector cut me off. Ugh, this is going to be a bitch to clean. He tugged at his clothes, grimacing at the blood. I was actually glad he didn't include anything else. I wasn't exactly in the right state of mind to handle what I thought was a murder that just occurred in my own house. Did you kill her? Not exactly, just sent her soul where it belonged. Right here. He pat his stomach for good measure. I grimaced. She didn't taste that good, don't know what she was thinking. Bullets don't really work on guys like me. But I guess she couldn't have known that. I'm sure. Told you I was a demon. No one ever believes me. You can't blame me, it all sounds like crazy talk. I don't even know if this is real right now. I could be hallucinating everything. Well, she roofied you to oblivion, so I don't blame you. You're probably seeing shit you shouldn't be seeing on top of all this. But it's real. You don't have to digest all this now, though. Speaking of digestion, she really ruined my diet. I didn't want to eat her, but it looked like I had no choice. Hector seemed to be talking to no one in particular as he went over to the kitchen to wash his hands. I stayed still in the chair, trying to come up with the right words to say. Hey, listen, I said as Hector approached me with a scissor. I was probably slurring my words, but I hoped I was still coherent enough to make sense. I know we started off, not exactly on the right foot, but I wanted to know if you were still interested in the offer. You really saved me from a tight bind just now, and I feel like it's the least I can do. Hector shrugged. I don't know. I felt pretty offended earlier when you just, kicked me out. I don't like being rejected. I had nothing to say to that. Hector glanced up at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. If you throw in some fried chicken every Friday, I might consider it. I blinked. Sure, fried chicken every Friday, not a problem. And leniency on the rent. I'll get it in, but it might not be monthly. I don't really have a job yet. I really shouldn't have been making deals while I wasn't sober, but it sounded pretty compelling at the time, and he did save my life, so I agreed anyway. Yeah, lenient rent. Got it. And no Nickelback. Their music makes me want to kill myself, and I'm immortal. So I can't even do that. I nodded blindly. Hector grinned as he began to cut the duct tape from my limbs. Sounds like a deal, roomie. Amy's body was never found, but police found a bunch of Rohypnol and GHB in her house, as well as bullets for an unregistered handgun, which was missing entirely from the scene of the crime. When I woke up, I found myself trying to recollect the events with a huge headache. The Rohypnol and GHB in her house were used to roofie me into complacency. The police briefly questioned me after finding her deranged messages to me and neighbor complaints about screams, but did not suspect me at all, as it was clear Amy had a history of stalking guys online, and she had finally snapped. Last I heard, they chalked it up to a disappearance and put out a search for her, but I know they'll never be able to find her. And as for Hector, well, he did his part by saving me from a kidnapping and a potential murder. The whole demon bit is still a little off-putting, but he can't be that bad if he saved my life when he could have just left me to die. I've tried to rationalize his arrival as something other than otherworldly, but I don't know how long I can keep convincing myself. He just finished moving in yesterday. He didn't have much, but the spare bedroom looked a lot better with things finally occupying the empty space again. Hopefully this works out well. I think we'll order some celebratory takeout tonight to commemorate his move-in and my narrow escape from death. Hector wants fried chicken. Story 3. I thought it was a prank at first, just a belated April Fool's joke from one of my buddies. I never thought for a second that it could have spiraled into the horrifying mess I've found myself in. The thick stone ceiling above me has made calling the cops impossible, but I think I have just enough signal to get this out to the internet. My note in a bottle, if you will. There are no clocks here, but as far as I can tell, this all started a few hours ago. I sat hunched over my computer desk, squinting at the harsh blue light of my monitor. I was going through my nightly ritual of scanning through Craigslist for any good deals. I was moments away from powering the computer down and giving my tired brain a break when I saw it. The image was so surreal, it took me a moment to figure out what I was looking at. There, nestled between a vintage typewriter and a dusty old sofa, was a picture of me. The title was my full name, and the price was listed at $1,500. I mentally went through all of my friends and family, trying to figure out who would do something like this, but came up empty-handed. I saw there were more pictures and went to scroll through them, but hesitated. I was afraid that I'd be met with fuzzy Polaroids of me taken from behind bushes and through windows. However, as I scrolled through the images, I realized I recognized each one. I'd taken them. They were all from my Facebook feed. A selfie I'd taken with some friends at a bar. A picture of me at the beach with my girlfriend. I felt my heart rate begin to quicken. My Facebook was set to private, and I never friended anyone I didn't know. How had these pictures gotten onto the internet? I clicked the listing and began anxiously reading the description. Product is a 26-year-old Caucasian male. It is 237 pounds and 5'8". It consumes approximately 2,200 calories per day. I raised an eyebrow at that last line. What would anyone want with that information? It went on to describe everything I'd eaten for the past 2 weeks in meticulous detail. Everything from the McGriddle I'd had on my way to work to the Snickers I'd munched on today after dinner. They even knew about my ADD medication. I nervously glanced around my house, suddenly feeling naked and vulnerable. Where were they getting this information? How long had they been keeping tabs on me? Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw a short message at the end of the post that made my skin crawl. Product is unathletic and should be easily collected by 2 to 3 people. Bringing weapons are suggested but not needed. Collected? Any hope of this being a joke was beginning to evaporate. How many people had seen the listing by now? What kinds of people go searching for a listing like this at all? Then I had a thought that made me bring a hand to my mouth. Did this page have my address listed? It seemed terrifyingly possible. The listing had seemingly every other detail about me. Why not that? My eyes scanned the web page until I found a message that explained everything. Address for $1,500. Email me if interested. It made a sick sort of sense. They'd found a way to monetize their stalking. Why let such great talent go to waste, right? I wondered how many other people he'd done this to. How many home invasions and robberies and abductions he'd helped facilitate just for a few $1,000. I immediately flagged the post, hoping to have it taken down. However, I quickly realized it would take hours, maybe even days, for the moderators at Craigslist to get to it. I didn't have that time to spare. My fingers flew across the keyboard, searching Google for some way to get a hold of the people at Craigslist, but in the end, all I could find was a generic contact form. Getting desperate, I opened my email to try one last gambit. I plugged in the seller's address, a random string of numbers and letters, and typed out a desperate plea to take down the listing, offering 5 times the original price. Waiting for a response was torture. I passed the time by running around my house, locking all of the doors and windows. I also turned out all of the lights to make it look like no one was home. I knew realistically the odds of some psycho seeing the post was slim. But the internet was a big place, and I didn't want to take any chances. I was so on edge that by the time I heard the ding of the email notification, my heart practically jumped out of my chest. I regret to inform you that the information has already been purchased. I buried my head in my hands. I had been too late. How long ago had it been bought? 10 minutes ago? An hour? A day? My line of thought was broken when the crackle of wheels on gravel brought my attention to the window. I pulled the curtains aside and peered out into the night, careful to reveal as little of myself as possible. A black SUV was pulling into my driveway, its occupants hidden behind a dark window. I told myself everything was fine, that they were just doing a 3-point turn and would be gone any minute. However, instead of driving away, the doors popped open in unison. 2 figures emerged from the car, dressed head to toe in black. I wanted to turn and run, but fear had paralyzed me. I watched helplessly as the men marched up to the front door and knocked loudly. I realized then that their plan must have been to wait for me to answer the door and drag me into their car, but I knew better. I began calling 911, cursing myself for not doing it sooner. The door was heavy oak and would take them at least a minute or two to kick down. That's when I heard it. There was a strange beeping sound coming from the other side of the door. After racking my brain for a few moments, I figured out what it was. It was the beeping of my door's keypad. They couldn't possibly know the code, could they? Then it dawned on me. The creep who'd posted the listing knew everything about me. Of course, they knew the passcode. My blood ran cold and I dashed away from the door, looking for a place to hide. Click. The door unlocked. I ducked behind a corner into the kitchen just as it began to slowly creak open. The back door was at the other side of the kitchen and I began creeping toward it, grateful I'd turned the lights out earlier. The two men cautiously stepped into the living room, talking in hushed voices about where I might be. I had almost made it to the back door when I bumped into the kitchen table. I cursed myself for not seeing it. Their whispers immediately stopped and they began marching toward me, forcing me to improvise a hiding place. I slipped into my kitchen's pantry and shut the door just as the light clicked on. The men, apparently no longer concerned with stealth, began stomping around the kitchen, looking for me. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed they didn't look inside, knowing I'd be completely helpless if they did. I bit down on my knuckles and time seemed to stretch out forever. But they eventually left, going deeper into the house to search for me. I let out a sigh of relief. Buzz! My phone was ringing in my pocket. I took it out and it was my girlfriend, Lexi. My eyes widened. Lexi. She'd be home any minute. What if the men decided to take her instead? I answered the call. "Hey, you," she said. "Lexi, don't come to the house. It's not safe." "Oh my God, where are you?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "I'm hiding in the pantry. I think I'm safe for now, but—" The line went dead. I felt my heart sink. Had they gotten to her already? Had I not warned her in time? Then I heard something strange vibrating noise in the room over. One of the men's phone was ringing. He answered it and listened a moment. His voice was raspy and muffled. "He's where?" Another pause. Then footsteps thundering straight toward me. My mind raced momentarily and then it hit me. The one who had posted the listing hadn't been stalking me. They had been living with me. Lexi was the one who'd posted it, and she'd just told them exactly where I was. I burst out of the pantry and made a break for the door, just as the two men rounded the corner behind me. I wanted to look back, but fought the urge. If I looked back, I'd get nervous. And if I got nervous, I'd stumble, and if I stumbled, they'd drag me into their car and do God knows what. I flung open the back door and ran into the cool, damp air. However, before I could make a break for it, one of them caught me by the hood, snapping my neck back. The fabric tightened around my throat, like a snake, making it hard to breathe. I blindly threw an elbow behind me, and it connected with his ribs. The man cried out in pain, and I felt his grip loosen by just a fraction. A fraction was all I needed. I tucked in my chin, drew in my arms, and wriggled out of the hoodie, falling to the wet earth on hands and knees. I made a mad dash for the tree line. As I ran, I heard angry shouts from behind me. "Just shoot! The damn thing is jammed." "Oh, give me that." A loud pop rang out in the night, and something whizzed past my ear. I wondered what they'd shot at me. The sound was too quiet to be a gun. A quick glance behind me revealed one of the men was holding what looked like a small, lightweight sniper rifle. It was green with a strange white chamber at the bottom. "What the hell is that thing?" The man shoved something inside, clicked it back, and took aim. Pop! Fear shot through me like a bolt of electricity. I jerked my body out of the way just in time for something to fly past me and bury itself in a nearby tree. It was a dart. They were shooting at me with a tranquilizer gun, like I was a wild animal. The tree line was about 40 feet away now. My lungs felt like they were full of bees, but I kept running anyway, knowing if I slowed even a fraction, they'd catch me. I did my best to avoid the darts, diving out of the way whenever I heard one of those sickening pops. But eventually, my luck ran out. Just as I reached the tree line, ready to disappear behind the dense foliage, I felt a red-hot sting in my back. Exhaustion began flooding my body, making my movements slow and sluggish. The world spun around me, and soon I found myself on the forest floor. My memories of what happened next are jagged and frayed, the click of a trunk, the jangle of chains. When I finally came to my senses, I found myself on a damp concrete floor, bathed in darkness, shivering from the biting cold. The only noise breaking the eerie silence were the heavy thuds of footsteps over my head. They left me my phone, maybe to keep me from going crazy, maybe to taunt me. To ensure I can't ask for help, they've somehow blocked all posting or messaging features. At least, almost all of them. No Sleep is the only place that I can post. At first, I thought they'd made a mistake. I thought maybe this subreddit had just slipped past them. But now I'm starting to realize it's because they think no one will believe me. But that can't be true. At least one of you has to believe me. Right? S. Story 4. So, over the last 7 months, I've been working for someone I responded to on Craigslist. Well, I'll just explain everything. This seems like an appropriate place to post this. I was scouring the internet for some sort of paying gig. I didn't really care what. Then I came across a post on Craigslist. I had just refreshed the page and there it was. Someone was looking for a person to come by and feed their pets. I assumed they were going out of town or something. So I contacted them and left my number through email. I got a response immediately in the form of a phone call. The caller was a man who explained to me that he was moving out of town, and his parents had cats they wanted fed daily. I gave the man my name so he could run me through a cursory background check, and in about 20 minutes I was hired. I went there the next morning to get all the instructions and whatnot, and met the man I'd spoken to on the phone. His name was Ben. Ben explained to me that he would no longer be able to care for his parents' cats, and that his parents needed to focus on themselves, so I was being brought on to take care of that. The money would be left on the kitchen table at the end of every week, $200 a week, just to feed some cats. I know, right? In addition to that, money for more cat food would be left for me as needed. Then he told me the first thing that I thought was strange. I was to come at exactly 10 a.m. every day and be gone by 10 a.m., and I was to never under any circumstances to interact with his parents. He told me that when I'm in their home, they will be in their chairs in the living room watching television, and that I was not to disturb them, ever. He asked if any of that would be a problem, to which I assured him it wouldn't. He then showed me the area in which the cats eat. There were 4 cats, and where the food was kept. While not rude in the least, he was very adamant that I not explore further in the house, which I promised him wouldn't be a problem. He ushered me outside and showed me where the spare key was in case the door was ever locked. But he told me that was very unlikely to happen, and with that he expressed his hope that I could be trusted one last time, shook my hand, and told me to be there at 10 a.m. every day starting tomorrow. If I was ever unable to make it, call and leave a message on their home phone, to which he gave me the number. I shook my head and was on my way. The next day came, and I went inside at exactly 10 a.m. I walked into the house, and immediately to my right were Ben's parents, sitting in recliners facing away from me, watching some kind of game show. I announced my presence, which they ignored, and made my way to the kitchen. I fed the cats bowls and left. This exact same scenario played out countless times over the next few months. 10 a.m., unreturned, hello. Feed the cats. Leave. On Fridays, I would pick up the small stack of $20 bills from the kitchen table. It was the easiest job I ever had. Then came the inevitable. One day, I was running late. I got to the house at 10:08. I entered and apologized to Ben's parents for being late, to which I once again got no response. They just kept sitting in their chairs watching their game show. I went to the kitchen and fed the cats. I looked at my phone, which read 10:11, and walked down the hall towards the front door. When I reached the living room, I jumped and gasped out of shock. Ben's parents were now standing in the dark behind their chairs, completely still, staring directly at me. I apologized for running late and got out of there. Though unnerved, I went back the next day on time and everything was fine. A few more months went by of nothing strange, and then came the last day I was there. I got there at 10:03, but wasn't worried because I knew I could be out before 10:10. The problem came when I was in the kitchen and I heard someone whisper the words, "Help me." It startled me, and I jumped, looking around for the source of the cry for help. I saw no one around, but I heard it again, and then a third time. I began looking around before realizing I was running behind. I looked at my phone, and it was 10:10. My heart sank to my stomach when I looked down the hallway and saw Ben's parents for the first time in the light. They were grossly emaciated and pale, looking completely malnourished. They were essentially walking skeletons. I apologized for taking so long and said I'd be on my way, but they just stood there, blocking the way to the front door. I said I would take the back door, which was located in the kitchen, but when I went to open it, I found that it required a key to open from the inside. Seriously. It was at this point that true panic set in. I looked behind me, and the parents were now about a half a foot away from the entrance to the kitchen, and I had nowhere else to go except what I presumed was a door to a pantry. They had blank stares across their faces, and their eyes looked as if the life had left them a long time ago. In a last-ditch effort, I went to the door that I thought was the pantry, and was instead met with a staircase leading into a basement with, of course, no light. As soon as I opened the door, there was a horrid stench that washed over the otherwise clean air I was standing in. I carefully went down the stairs and looked for a window, but they were all nailed shut. I happened to look back up the stairs, and the parents were now standing next to each other at the top of the stairs. It was truly horrifying. I pulled out my phone and called 911, not knowing what else to do, and when I explained my situation, they said they would send a car out immediately, and to stay on the phone while they connected me to the unit en route. I ran into the dark basement using my phone as a light. It didn't provide too much illumination since I was in the middle of a call, but it was just enough. There were racks of junk that lined the basement, separating it into almost aisles. I went down to check if any of the windows were possibly loose, like I'd be that lucky. Then I turned around and shined the light in front of me, and I was inches away from the parents' lifeless-looking faces. I let out a scream and ran in the other direction and tripped over something, sending my phone flying from my hand. Of course, it landed face down, so I couldn't find it. I ran back up the stairs and into the kitchen, looking back and seeing the parents standing at the bottom of the stairs, with slight grins on their faces. I ran down the hall to the front door and flung it open, screaming when I saw the cop standing right in front of me. He asked me if I was the one that called as I pushed past him to get outside, and told him I was. I looked in the window and saw the parents sitting in their chairs, watching their game show. I explained that these crazy old people had trapped me in their house and were chasing me around. The cop went in to talk to the parents and look around while I sat in the cop car. He came back out about 5 minutes later and asked if I was sure someone was chasing me. I said yes, I was absolutely sure, that it was the two old people that lived there. He informed me that the people that lived there, the people in the chairs, have been dead for quite some time. I asked what the smell in the basement was, and he said there was another body down there. Backup showed up. I gave them my statement and explained how I'd been coming there every day for months and months to feed the cats. I told them to call Ben, the homeowner's son. I gave them the number and it was disconnected. I found out a few days later that the body in the basement was Ben. What I don't get is who's been paying me.